Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I am joined by Victor of Dune, and I believe we might have one more showing up. But Victor, thank you so much for joining me. How are we doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and you have a new record coming out, Voidkind, coming out April 19th on Metal Blade Records. That must be very exciting for you.
Yeah, no, we are delighted about it.
Yeah.
So far, the reception of the two singles have been amazing. So we're just very happy for people to hear the rest of the album.
Yeah, well, this is your second release on Metal Blade Records. What has been the experience, working with them like?
Yeah, very good. Every album has been different so far. Every experience has been different so far. Before we were on a indie label called Wasted State Records, based
Hmm.
in Scotland. They both approaches have their pro and cons, but it's cool being on a bigger label because
Yeah.
you've got your vinyls all over the world. You've got your, my parents in France find their my vinyls
Yeah.
in some shops from time to time. So it's very cool for that. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the platform is much better, to get our name out there. And
Yeah.
I'm sure part of the success we had over the last two albums is also due to that. So no, it's been
Yeah.
very good.
Cool. And did you ever possibly imagine when you started this band that you would be on this roster?
Um, but this like the commercial side of things never been like the main goal of this band. We just were literally this project has been us writing music together. Like to start with, it was Dudley, Dan, and I, and then other collaborators, Alan, Jack, and all these people
Hmm.
and Max, all the people who've been with us on the way. But it was more like, we had two EPs and then we had like our first album, which is called Asheron.
Yeah.
And that was in 2017. And I remember when the album was finished, we did a bit of touring and I kind of thought, this was cool. I had a really good time, but I feel like maybe I'm going to try other things and maybe, either go back to France or go to another country, travel, this kind of thing. And at the time, we got a call from someone over your part of the world, Psycho Las Vegas, asked us to play their festival. So that happened, and then everything kind of started. We got labels interested about what we were doing, and people were wondering, hey, would you like to do an album with us? And Metal Blade offer was three album with us, and okay, that made sense at the time. So we just went for that. I moved back to Scotland, and here we are, two new albums with Dune, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious a little bit about you because I know you are originally from France. Did you how did you end up with a band with a UK based band? Did you move at some point early on or
Yeah, I
yeah.
moved in the UK in 2011 or 12 or something like that.
Okay.
And at the time, it was more like, to learn English, have a gap year, and then I ended up studying here. But what happened is every time I was in a different city, I was in London, Nottingham,
Hmm.
studying. I would start a band, and I would just, like, here's a new band, here's a new band, and then I moved to Scotland. And I just felt like I remember saying to a friend, I'm not moving away from Scotland until I've made an album, or from the UK until I've made an album, because I had
Yeah.
this really romanticized version of, it's a country of Black Sabbath and,
Yeah.
like the old Motorhead and all the classic stuff and all the stuff I grew up on. I'm not that old. It's just because of skateboard, I used to listen to a lot of Motorhead and a lot of Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And yeah, during that time, I just discovered so many new things by playing in bands, like all the good stuff like Neurosis, Mastodon, Opeth, and all
Oh
this stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, it just got into that. Then this project, it just felt like this is what we wanted to do, and then here we are. Now I've met Dudley, Dan, and I've got all these guys in the band, Max, Alan, and all the people we worked with in the past, and yeah, it's part of us. I just don't see myself moving away anytime soon because
Yeah.
this is too much fun.
Yeah, for sure. Uh well, Voidkind, you're following up Edamanenka, which was pretty well received, and I'm wondering in what ways would you say Voidkind builds off of what you did with that record?
I'd say what was good with Etemen is for us, not for the rest of the world, there was this huge gap that happens with lockdown, and because we weren't a touring band at the time. We were like, doing a bit of touring, but nothing crazy. We still have like full-time job most of the time.
Hmm.
For us, for most of the members, sorry. And so we were more like, okay, it's not the end of the world. We don't have to tour straight away. So, which is good because we had to learn how to play this album live. We don't have necessarily the most technical music in the world, but it's very layered,
Sure.
and there's no click track and there is none of that. So it's really about us playing together, and I'm doing vocals while doing guitar, Dan
Mhm.
also, and sometimes to time the riff can be a little, we like playing with weird time signature and like weird
Sure.
syncopation. So you have to also match that with the vocals and make sure you are able to do this live. So if we just did what we're doing right now with this album, which we're able to do now thanks to the experience, 4 months to prep for an album like this live is not enough. And we were like, took the time to really like, leave this album, and prep it live.
Sure.
And bring those synths live as well, because we had all these, very intense synths moment with like low basses, leads and stuff like that. And it took that during that period, we kind of had time to reflect a bit on things and being like, okay, here now we are playing all these songs live. It's going really well, but we in our head we start taking mental notes, being like, hey, this is fun and all these songs are fun, but every time we're trying to do like a set that's maybe a bit shorter, we really struggle because all the songs are so long, and they're
Sure.
so and they are like build-ups and stuff like that. So sometimes we'll be playing festival and our sets were good, but the sometime in our head we were like, oh, I wish we had a couple more shorter songs and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
when we arrived with this, we also realized that we had so much on the album that wouldn't get heard live, so we had to make choices on how to best present the song, so it still feels like the album, which is, I think we managed quite well. But that also means when we arrived in the studio for this album, we had all this stuff in mind, which were okay. We like a lot of the things we used to do. Let's build on these, but we don't have to do that for every songs. The other things we want to do is make more distilled song, like songs that were like still very much us, still telling a story, still being like classic, Dune post prog metal things kind of thing,
Hmm.
and escape still, but do that in a more concise manner, which is a whole challenge on its own, because
Yeah, that's not
yeah,
easy.
no, 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 for sure, like good pop, man, like good pop in general is
Yeah.
for me amazing because you have 3 minutes of music well layered and well placed, but it still is like engaging.
Yeah.
And obviously pop for us is 5 minutes. So, but yeah, so it's kind of what we went for with this one.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to ask because on this record versus the last one, you've added a dedicated keyboardist, and what has that? How has that allowed you to kind of further craft your sound?
Yeah, of course, it's been excellent
Yeah.
on Etemen. On Etemen, we had a lot of keys, but I wrote all the keys on Etemen. On this one, we
Yeah.
had Max. Max also does vocals on this album. It's been excellent because the way we write music is not it's never one guy writing music. It's like us as a group writing music. There's a foundation part, and then there's the finishing steps of making an album with us, which is Alan, Dudley, and I. We are writing the foundation of the music, guitars, bass, and drums, and rhythmical structure, and all these kind of things. And then when we arrive further down the line, Dan and Max were involved with vocals, and Max and I were doing keys together. And
Sure.
the what's good about that is you can bounce ideas at each other, and you can jam and you can try things, and it's like, well, that's not very good. Try that,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So it's a good process to have. I think it helps. It means you've got a lot of filters on the way as well, of like buffers, as you filter the bad things and you keep the only the good things, which I think is a good process. It's long, sometimes a little painful, but overall we know it's a recipe that works.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm kind of inserting my opinion here, but as someone who has, heard your last record and has now listened to Voidkind, um, something I notice, at least in my opinion, is there seems to be more of an emphasis on some of the clean vocal passages. Am I correct on that? And maybe what led you to kind of approach this record with that vein?
Do you think there is more clean on this album?
I think so, yes. At least
Yeah.
it really sticks out to me.
But to be honest, I never really thought about it. It's more like when it comes to vocals, it's more what when we are demoing vocals, we are more like what feels right.
Hmm.
There's certainly been a chat with Dan and I where we felt like Dan vocals were more like the secret weapon, because his vocals are so heavy.
Yeah,
So his Dan's vocals are the guy, the heavy vocals, Yorkshire
sure,
accents, kind of classic old school English. And mine is a bit more mid-range. So his vocals has more like of sometimes a classic old school death metal vibe to it, nearly,
sure.
which I love. But
Hmm.
sometimes we felt like, all right, let's save those moments for like the moments where we really want to go at it.
Yeah,
And so my voice and Mac's voice are there quite a lot on the album, but it's like I'm doing most of the clean. Max does a bit of backups like second voice and stuff like that. And then we've got other type of screaming that we share with Max. But yeah, we never really thought about it as like, oh, let's make an album that has more clean vocals. That said, I think we really improved our vocals on this album because we pre-produced them. So we planned
hmm,
them a bit ahead. We used to kind of wing them, we kind of just
yeah,
used to do that a bit last minute. No, it's a bit more like it's been a bit more well thought and yeah,
hmm,
well thought.
sure. Another thing I would say I noticed about this record versus the last one is it feels like more of a big production, where Edmund Anka had a bit of a it maintained a bit of a rawness. This one feels more like it's trying to be like a my dog's really
I
into
can
this.
I can see that, yeah.
More of like this more expansive experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the production. We interestingly enough, we produced the album with the same producer,
Hmm.
Graham, and we mastered it with the same mastering engineer too. So it's the same team. However, the 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 kind of brief for everyone, including in the band and them, was we wanted the album to sound different and sound more lively,
Sure.
and like with more distinct guitars, left right kind of thing, with like a more central bass, with like more individuality, and then same with the drums, the more dynamic drums, a bit more present. And maybe this is what you are hearing. I think maybe Etemen was maybe slightly not overproduced, but maybe had too many layers. And when you have too
Mm,
many layers, sometimes you lose a bit of dynamics, and you're also
sure.
losing a bit of personality, individuality that you catch. So yeah, to me also, we recorded in a tower outside Edinburgh. So we were
Oh,
in this big medieval kind of tower.
sure.
And we were sleeping next to it. So we were like we had like this nice, very nice acoustic that we
Yeah.
really took advantage of during the recording process.
Well, I think recording in a tower kind of fits the themes of the record because I mean, lyrically, and you can kind of see it in the artwork, which I love, by the way, is that you seem to have this narrative going around, like following like themes of like religion and followers of different ideas. Could you expound on that a bit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, to be honest, Edinburgh in general Scotland in general is such a medieval town. There is history absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is good for us because when it comes to like writing the lyrics and the concept, when we are working on them with a group and more specifically with Dan, we think about them as both from science fiction and sci fantasy kind of inspiration, but there is
Mm,
a lot of history and a lot of etymology and like a bit of study of all languages and stuff sometimes because we like making words and like creating like little things and like
mm,
winking at references either from science fiction or from history. So in this album, because the album is about religion and many different elements of religion, the birth of a religion, the spreading of the religion,
mm,
there's martyrdoms, there's a lot of things like that. There is also a religion war in it and like these kind of things. And
mm.
there is this element of that. So it's always good to have all these historic elements to kind
Yeah.
of latch on, or like human history and like languages
Yeah.
elements to latch on, but also same story with some amazingly written books that we were really rinsing, even video games, to be honest, and animes, mangas, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But one book that was really important for us on this album is a book called Hyperion.
Okay.
Dan Simmons, that's the name. I think that's his name. Yeah, Dan Simmons. It's a book we basically all read during the writing of this, and we really loved it because he has his vibe to it. He has like it's very mysterious, and he talks about a lot about religion in it.
Mm.
Um, and then another thing that we really enjoyed as well, we've rinsed the from software video games like Dark Soul, Elden Ring, and Blasphemous and stuff like that, which is another video games. And all of
Oh
these
yeah.
games have these like really interesting elements. It's very cryptical, you're like you don't really know what's going on, and then you start reading something somewhere, and you're like, ah, right, this is what's happening, and then you start putting a story together in your head. It's kind of what we wanted to do with the lyrics. We didn't want to go here's chronologically the story of this album of what's happening. We just wanted to tell stories of different people, and then if you start adding all the songs together, you understand the whole concept of this album. So yeah, that's for the nerds out there who want to dive into our lyrics.
Well, I am one of those nerds.
Yes,
I'm
very good.
glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about it because you have mentioned that you are inspired by like the Souls-like series, and I love talking to bands about video games. I play a lot of them myself. That's a game that has seemed to spawn a lot of metal bands, and I'm wondering
Of
what
course.
about that game in particular really inspired you as a band?
Well, literally, we are massive fans of Berserk. Dan has been telling me about Berserk for at least since I've met him.
Yeah,
I've got the whole collection in my thing. So Berserk is just the inspiration for Dark Souls, isn't it?
yeah,
So then Dark Souls, same story. It's just the game is so good, the story is so good. What I love particularly about it, obviously the universe is super good. This kind of dark fantasy world. What's not to like if you're a metal band, really?
yeah,
And then the other thing, what I like the most about it is the fact that you don't really understand the story unless you really dig into it.
yeah,
You have to pick up elements of an armor or like whatever an item, and then you have to read the description of the item to kind of give you clue on this kind of thing. I think I've surprised myself going on like late at night on YouTube, try to find like, oh, what's the story of this guy or what's the story of this guy, and I really like that. I like something where you like escape. I like this element of escapism when you're playing a game, reading a book or whatever, and you're not completely satisfied with the answer you're getting from what you're reading, that you have to go back to it or look for answers elsewhere and even start discussion with your friends. So to me, as when we're writing lyrics with Dan, it's particularly great because it's such a good way to be creative really with your
yeah.
lyrics and your stories. So yeah, that's really what inspired us. Also, it's extremely fun and yeah, a bit of gratuitous violence. Is that what you
Yeah.
that what you would say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's also a
sometimes it's
very, very difficult game. That
yes,
is,
of course, of course.
yeah. You
Yes.
know, I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of storytelling. Like when I completed my playthrough through Baldur's Gate, what I noticed is that like there's a great story there, but a lot of the pieces, a lot of the backstory, you can get as much of it as you want because
Yeah.
you got lore from different notes you found on the ground or NPCs you chose to talk to or not or
Or
things you
not, yeah.
examine. It's all there's pieces there that are not directly given to you, and because of that, you could find different artifacts, and then you're interested. What does this apply? And you go to Reddit or something and figure out, hey, how does this apply to the story? And there's so many back elements, and like being able to create a world completely is really fascinating. I think metal bands like being able to do that too, completely detach from this one and create something that's completely complete, but completely different from, what we're in right now.
No, no, for sure. I think it also helps building like a nice identity around an album. He helps keeping things very, cohesive, coherent, and you listen to now people who are digging these kind of things. They're going to listen to this album and go into like, all right, this is kind of the universe I am in right now,
Yeah.
which I love personally.
Yeah. Are you playing anything else specifically right now?
No, actually, I had a bit of I've been rinsing like indie games mostly.
Yeah,
I've kind of had a bit of yeah, I think it's maybe because we're busy prepping for touring, so I don't
sure.
know, my head is not really into gaming just now, but it'll come back when I've got a bit of proper downtime.
Sure. Yeah. Right now I'm playing through Hades, the roguelike. It's
Finished
trying to
it.
oh yeah, it's so
Yes,
fun just trying to escape from hell.
it's good.
I'm I've I've beaten it, but I know you have to like get
redo
through
it. Yeah.
hell like 10 times. So I'm like halfway through that. So I just need to pick it up and just like do a final few runs and then I can say I beat the game. But yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, no, I did it too, but then when I realized you have to redo it over and over again, I kind of gave up. Have you played Blasphemous and Blasphemous 2?
I have not played it yet. I have heard of it. I know it's kind of, I know it's a game I would enjoy. So it's one I need to get to at some point.
It's amazing. I highly recommend it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love nerding out about games.
Of course.
Um, you put out the track Pleroma as kind of the opening single, and there is a music video out for it. Why did you choose to lead off with that track?
Um, Kind of because it felt unexpected for us. It's I wouldn't say the softer track, but it's probably one of the like it starts weird, it starts cinematic, and then it
Mhm.
finishes in a cinematic way, which I really like. But then the body of the song is as pop as it gets. It's like a verse chorus bridge kind of thing, which is not very us, I must say, but we love that song. There's something about it that just is so accessible and quite enjoyable. I find that track really enjoyable, and I just
Mm,
because it's so different than what we used to do in the past, we just thought this is cool and a good way for people who don't know us to kind of get it. We're not unveiling at all what this album is about, which is really cool.
mm,
While at the same time, it's a centerpiece of the album. It tells a lot about what's happening in the album, about the story, and it gives a bit of the colors of a part of the album.
mm,
So we wanted to start with something that would maybe put people like it still is likable and it still is like enjoyable, but it would might be people will scratch their head a little bit of like I'm not quite sure what this album is going to be like. Is it going to be like are they going to go softer, or is it just a one track that is like that? And
mm,
then really when we thought about it as we're gonna go with this track because we know there is a second single, and with the second single what we did is we went for let's go for a harder track, a track that's a bit more hard hitting, which is
mm.
Abode of the Perfect Soul. And it's exactly that. I think like it's like you think we were soft, we went soft. Well, there's still some of the maybe harder and maybe more impacting stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I think it was very difficult for us to pick up um, singles because every single track feels very different than the others, and
Yeah.
they don't really. I don't think there is a track that's very representative about what this album is about,
Mm.
except maybe for the last song of the album. But again, the last song of the album is you don't unveil you don't tease a movie with the ending of the movie.
No, yeah. And you're right, Pleroma, it did stand out to me as something that's a little different from what you've done, but like in the context of the record, it is the second to last track. It does feel like with the story you're telling, it's kind of like this more atmospheric come down. You're right, kind of it's the pre-conclusion. It's like the emotional build up to the ending, and that's kind of where that track kind of sits, like in the way I see it.
Yeah, if you listen to the whole album, you're correct. But I think
Yeah.
if you take, I think also why we also took it is because he made such a good music video.
Hmm.
We were like, this tells a story that's very clear and quite easy to follow. So yeah, it just felt right. It just still feels right to me.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's great. You still have, that confirmation, in your gut. Well, your band has, up to this point, has played some pretty key gigs. You've done Hellfest, you've done Damnation. Any touring plans or, big festival appearances that you were at liberty with sharing with my viewers?
Yes, we're gonna be doing Copenhagen,
Okay.
Mystic. Yeah, Copenhagen is in Denmark, Copenhagen, sorry. We are playing Dansk, a festival called Mystic Festival in Poland. We're doing another festival. There's a bunch. I'm just giving you the big ones. Motoculture in France, which is like also quite a big festival. There's a few. No Tangent this year, unfortunately. We did it twice in a row, but they weren't looking to do three times in a row. Never say never, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they give us a call last
Yeah.
minute. But yeah, no, that's it, top of my head. But we've got about 33 shows. A lot of them are headlining, and within that there is festivals, some smaller festivals like Dunk Festival and stuff like that. But then for the second half of the year, we've got a bunch of new festivals that are going to be unveiled very soon.
Cool. Are there any like bucket lists, either venues or festivals that your band hasn't done that you'd want to play? Like, is playing Vakin a goal of yours? Like something like that.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I'm being from France, and because I used to work and volunteer at Hellfest when I was younger,
Yeah.
this festival really introduced me to a lot of things and kind of confirmed what I wanted to do. Like I was
Yeah.
always thinking that was a bucket list. That was on top of my
Yeah.
bucket list, and so this happened. No, I can die happy kind of thing, but it's
Yeah.
more like now that has happened, the kind of like a bucket list vibe is not as big as it used to be.
Sure.
Also realized as you get a bit older that it's not necessarily about like those big. Oh, I want to play that. This has been the main thing I've been wanting to do as a band since forever. Actually, I'm quite enjoying I'm enjoying all sorts of shows and just letting the experience happen and just live in the moment kind of thing rather than
Yeah.
having massive expectations about like, oh, we're going to be playing Roadburn or stuff like that. I would love to play Roadburn, of course, but it's not because we're going to play Roadburn that is going to be the best gig of our life. I think one of my favorite shows so far have been some shows that not necessarily the biggest. We played Paris once, and it was like a very nice show, maybe 400 people, sold out. My family was there. It was like amazing.
Mhm.
And sometimes these shows are like as important as a big one.
Of course. I mean, the answer might be obvious, but for you, like, what's the biggest, difference, advantages and cons of both of like playing a more intimate, smaller venue versus playing, these big festival stages?
I think you need to approach them the same. The only
Okay.
difference, obviously, is your production. But out, like what you got on stage, the amount of amps and all these kind of things. Obviously, there is maybe a bit more nerve from time to time when it comes to some of those bigger festivals, but you need to approach them the same way. I think the more we play, the more we tour, and the more we see other bands as well, the more we
Yeah.
realize what we want to present. I think one band that keeps on coming in our heads, and we feel like I just love watching them play because they
Yeah.
seem like they're in control, they're completely in
Yeah.
control of what they are doing, and they don't overplay. They play together rather than pretending to like be hard or whatever.
Mhm.
Opeth, Opeth. Every time I see them, they are amazing,
Oh yeah.
and it's like controlled, and they don't overplay. They're having fun. It's not overly serious. However, when it's time to play, they are like top of the class kind of thing. So. I'm much more inspired by bands like that nowadays. When I was younger, I used to be maybe a bit more like, oh, I want to do like the Neurosis stuff, like like really hard thing. And
Yeah.
then getting a bit older, I just think I think it's cool and it's amazing. Some bands, it's part of what they are doing. It's not really I don't have this in me, like this kind of like things I need to get out. I'm just doing this for the love of music.
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking up, something I think of when that I'm always curious with bands who, have played both festival stages and the small stages. It's like when you're playing like just like a standard venue and you sell tickets to your show, you know, you're playing for an audience that came for you, is familiar with your music. They want to see you, whereas a festival, you're gonna get a lot of that. But you're also gonna, be playing for a lot of people that maybe not familiar with your music, but maybe you were playing at a time when they weren't seeing any of the band. They walked past, they just like saw music and they're watching. You're gonna get a lot of people that you might be introducing your music to for the first time, and that must be there has to be a somewhat of a slightly different approach, knowing that. Am I wrong?
Yes and no. I
Yeah,
think on this tour, yes, because we've got a couple of festivals which are giving us like smaller slots, like 40, 45 minutes, and
yeah,
40 minutes for us is short because our songs are quite long, and
yeah,
so we are here we have to take a different approach. We cannot go for like here's a very long interludes and all these kind of things. We've got to take a different approach. But so far, like our show at Hellfest was an hour long. We've got Copenhagen, sorry,
yeah,
is also going to be an hour long. So I think those festivals nowadays, I think the industry has changed a little, and now they are checking the bands are putting on stage, and they kind of look at it as what is this band doing, and how
yeah.
should we approach their set. So they kind of usually give us an hour knowing that this is what we need, and I think people enjoy that. They
Yeah.
enjoy the fact that, you don't want to watch 40 minutes of grindcore, but when it comes to post and prog metal,
Yeah.
you've got to be, you need to let things develop a little bit. And I think people also enjoy that. So far, the festivals we've been playing, it's a different interaction. It's not like people are like jumping on each other and stuff like that. There might be a bit more of that with this album,
Yeah.
but I think people tends to be more like kind of watching, and I can see that they are taking it in rather than just being like, like overly over the top, like
Hmm.
moshing and stuff like that. It's more the vibe we usually have.
I'm going to a festival next month, actually, a Maryland Death Fest, and one of the bands that's playing that I'm very interested in seeing how they pull this off is Ahab, a band that plays, pretty much
Doom,
like
yeah,
mainly like 15-minute tracks.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
how does a band like that, work with like a 40-minute festival slot? I'm very intrigued. I'm sure that we're gonna be able to pull it off just fine, but it's like, what does a band like that do with that constraint? It's a different challenge.
I think for them it's another again very different. It's not only about the length of the tune, but what is in the tune. With them, it's like doom, and it's like a different type of doom as well. I would guess you call that funeral doom.
It's yeah, I would say Funeral
Yeah,
Doom, yeah.
and it's a different vibe. You here, you're more, yeah, like zoning out. You're totally zoning out when you're listening to this. I remember watching a band. What is this two-piece with just a bassist, and the bassist has like a 8-string bassist. It's like a doom funeral band. I've seen
Hmm.
Psycho, and I really enjoyed them. Hold on, it's gonna come back to me. Whichever. That's fine. No worries. I'll move on. Anyway, when I saw them, Bell Witch. Here you go.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say. Is it Bell Witch? Yeah.
Bell Witch. Yeah. So I saw Bell Witch, and I didn't thought I would enjoy it at all, and I actually really enjoyed it because
Hmm.
same story. I just zoned out, and you kind of go into like a bit of your little world, and you're hearing. So it's nearly more experimental. This kind of thing. With us is different. It's very
Yeah.
eventful what we are offering. It's like composed music
Yeah.
in a way. It's somewhere between Tool Mastodon and Opeth, and within that, it's personally when I watch band like that, it's hard to not be engaged because you're gonna be like, oh, here's something, we're building up something, and here's a moment, like a key moment, like a climax, and then we're gonna maybe do something again that's gonna change and flip the song on its head. And so it's a bit like when you are watching a movie or something like that. And there's a lot of events happening in it. And I think it's more what we're offering. So as I never had a moment where I felt like this song is too long for a festival because or
Mm.
for whatever, because there's so much stuff happening within it.
Yeah. And I'm hearing you kind of describe your music and trying to classify it. And I've seen your music described as like some people call it progressive metal, some people call it like sludge, some people call it post metal, and like maybe all three of those elements do kind of correctly describe what you're doing. Do you have like a very simple way to kind of sell your music? Like, what do you put on a piece of paper?
Um, yes, I think I wouldn't say sludge is necessarily accurate. Personally, I
Yeah,
don't. I like bands that are like crossover bands. Bands that are like
yeah,
doing many different things, and they don't
yeah,
really restrain themselves. That's what we're doing. Us sometimes there's
yeah,
some bands that are gonna feel a bit sludgy because we are tuned, quite low on some stuff. Sometime we're gonna have stuff that are gonna feel like folk music because there's like a moment where we want to have like an intro of a song, which is probably gonna be more like folk inspired.
yeah,
Very much the case with Sarmate and the song that opens Sarmate on the album. And then we've got other songs that are gonna be like maybe feel even a little stoner because of the colors and the choice of notes and stuff
yeah.
like that.
I would agree with that.
So I don't mind too much. I think if you place us on there's a festival in the UK called Arctangent. I've mentioned it earlier on.
Hmm.
And I feel like this is kind of where we live. This is kind of where we are at, because all of these bands within this band, things range from math rock to full on like to Meshuggah, and you have everything that's in between. You even have stuff that have like black metal vibe to it
Sure.
and stuff like that. But all of these bands have one point in common is usually they just are within a scene, but they kind of are gravitating around many other things. So I think this is where we are. I think post progressive metal is probably a good thing to go for.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like referring to you as a prog metal band, but there's like other elements of it that will like separate you from say a Dream Theater. You're not the same band as that. It's a different type of progressive metal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find the word progressive super interesting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of post-metal bands are prog because
Sure.
it's not just about virtuosity and like noodling guitars and weird key change and like weird time signature change and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think it's more about progressive is more about progression really. And I mean
Hmm.
classical music is that's what they do. They just used to do that back then. They used to change keys, they used to change time signature. It's just I think we were used for a while
Yeah.
to like pretty simplistic like type of music and that we feel like no we've got to put a name in front of it when you know it's just yeah it's just what it is.
I think a lot of metalheads love classical music, myself included. Like people see me and like see all my metal shirts I'm wearing, and they're so surprised when I'm at my job and I'm playing, like Brahms, and they're like, "This is so different." And I'm like, "No, it's not." Like, I mean, it's the instrumentation is different, but it's the same. It's the same type of buildups. It's the same kind of changes. It's very texture based, like as metal is. I think that's why metal and classical has a large overlap in fan base and enjoyment.
Yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, Victor, of Dune, I don't have anything else written down to ask for you, but of course, before I let you go, want to kind of give the floor to you for any potential last thoughts or any plugs you might have for my viewers.
No, no, nothing in particular.
Yeah,
I would just say thank you very much for having me, and yeah, to everyone who's going to be listening to our album, yeah, take your time with it. This is a kind of
yeah,
album. First listen a grower, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, we cannot wait to release it. We are very, very proud of this one.
Cool. Well, for everyone watching at home, Dune's new record, Voidkind, will be coming out April 19th off of Metal Blade Records. I've heard it. I enjoy it quite a bit, and I think you should listen to it. And hey, thank you to my patrons. My name is Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh, and I'm signing off.